And it's, John 15:5, Jesus is the one who said, apart from me, you can do nothing.
That's right.
And it is a calling, it is a personal relationship, it's a journey that God's got you on. And I'm excited because God has been speaking to a lot of you.
Yes.
Others of you saying, well, I don't have that, I just think it's a good idea. Don't do this. If it's a good idea, don't do this. If it's a calling from God, chase after it with all your heart and life. And but the second tool that's required in this journey is that character and authenticity are required to sustain growth. That whole character piece, who you are when nobody's around.
Yes.
Not, I remember hearing a friend say something at a conference recently. He said, my wife looked at me, and he's pastor of a large church, and my wife looked at me one day and said, I want to be married to the man who's on stage, not the man that lives at my house. Wow. I mean, that whole character, who you are when no one else is around.
Yes.
You impress people from a distance, but you influence them close up.
That's right.
It's so who you are at the very core, who you are in the dark, that character is critical. I mean, you've seen that in the journey, Matt.
Here's what I know, church planners. You're good. We're good. We're good at what we do, or else we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't have achieved the success we've had in ministry up to this point, be it in another church or in a previous ministry position or in a previous church plant, whatever. Here's the reality, and this is a John Maxwell quote. John Maxwell is a personal hero of mine. Your talent has the ability to take you further than your character can sustain you. And I'll never forget when I heard John first share that at a conference or at an event we were at. And I just remember allowing that to be a prayer in my heart. And so church planners, if we could encourage you to do anything right now, while you're in, many of you, this pre-launch phase, listen, here's what you got to do. You got to dig out that stuff, man. You got to dig it out. If you've got character issues like Ron's talking about, those things in the dark, listen, church planting will not make them instantly go away. It's like temptation, like getting married doesn't solve temptation. Listen, if anything, your church plant and going through the exercise and the process of planting your church will only intensify those character deals. And so I guess if I could say anything to church planners today, which I guess I get the chance to for a few minutes, I would encourage you, listen, whatever you got to do, dig it out now. If there are habits, if there are thought patterns that are unhealthy, if there are attitudes, if there are addictions, you got to dig that stuff out now. Man, if there's bitterness toward your old pastor or toward a relative or whatever, if you got marriage stuff going on, listen, you got to dig this stuff out. Here's why, because poor character will be the derailment of a strong skill set, plain and simple. Yeah. Poor character will be the derailment of a strong skill set.
Yeah, you might bring all the skills to the table, but if there's a character issue, it will derail you. It will take, and that's true about staff members as well. If there's a character issue in a staff, it doesn't matter how well they perform. That character defect is going to take them down. The third tool we want to give to you, we keep driving, is leadership capacity. This one, the gift of leadership is critical for a church planter. I mean, we can't talk enough about leadership, and there's a whole section on leadership later on, but leadership is that, is anybody really following you? If, what is it, Rick Warren said years ago, you know what, if you want to know if you're a leader or not, look over your shoulders. If no one's following you, you're just taking a walk. And it's true in leadership. Leaders, you know what leaders do? Leaders come to events like this with a team. Or they go to visit churches with a team because there's people following. And they've already gotten, there's some of y'all are here. I've met them at the Springs. You come here on the weekends and you just to see the Springs, and you bring a team of people. You haven't started your church yet. You're vision casting, man. You're just letting them see. That's what leaders do. Leaders bring teams and build teams.
Love this statement in the notes. A pastor can maintain a church, but it takes a leader to start a church. A pastor can maintain a church, but it takes a leader to start a church. Again, I think one of the encouragements I would make would be, man, work on you. Don't give up on your personal leadership. There's going to be a lot going on. The to-do list is going to be chronically overfull in a church plant reality like so many of you are stepping into in the near future. And I would just say, listen, it's so paramount. It's so important to not neglect developing your own leadership. Everything truly does rise and fall on leadership.
Yeah, and the quote that's there in your notes is from a book called The E-Myth. If you haven't read it as a church planter, read it.
Phenomenal.
It's the entrepreneurial myth. And the quote there says, would-be entrepreneurs believe in what I call the fatal assumption that knowing how to do the technical work means you know how to build a business. And I put in there, knowing how to do ministry means you know how to start a church. It's just not the same thing. It's not going to be the same skill set. You've got to have leadership capacity. Give you another book if you haven't read it. You're going to hear a lot of books come off the stage. Art of the Start, Guy Kawasaki. It's a must read if you're a church planter. And because you've got to realize you're starting something from nothing.
Yep.
This is, God's calling you to something, but you've never done it. And in that, who's it, Andy Stanley, vision and uncertainty are inseparably linked. Because you've got to lead where you've never been before, but you've got to lead, and that's where you've got to be a leader, and you've got to hone that skill and that passion within you.
It's good. So we're talking about tools required in church planting: calling, character, leadership capacity. Number 4 is a vision for the city. A vision for the city. A Tim Keller quote there: throughout history, people have used cities to build great churches. We're going to use this church to build a great city. Let me say this. Here's the deal. In church planting, it is not enough to just have a vision for your church. That's not enough. Listen, that's not the passion of Jesus. Everywhere Jesus went in his ministry, he didn't just grow churches. Everywhere Paul went, they didn't just plant and grow and start churches. They elevated the spiritual reality and climate of the city that church was in. And that is our calling, church planters. Our calling is not just to build a great church in a city or to use a great city to build a great church. Our calling as church planters has got to be bigger than just our one church. And I'm not talking multi-site. I'm talking a vision to lift the spiritual climate and reality of a city.
Yeah, that's good. That's, someone asked a question of us at the Springs years ago, because I think Teddy and I, when we first started, our goal was, you know what, God, if we had 200 people, it would be great one day. That's kind of the way we started, because 300 people, that would be great. And someone asked the question and said, if the Springs was gone tomorrow, would Ocala miss it?
Yeah.
And, I said, of course they would. There's thousands of people here. Of course they'd miss us. And he said, that wasn't the question I asked. I didn't ask, would the people that go here miss you? I asked, will the city miss you? Because if they don't, then you've missed your mission. And God is just building in that quote by Tim. I sat in a hotel room with Tim Keller and a group of men, and I heard him say those words, and it just captured me. I've got a band on my wrist, and that's what it says: building a great city.
Come on.
Because we as a church have said, you know what, these bands, a lot of our church members still have them. Over a year ago, we said, you know what, God sent us as missionaries into this city. And every day I get up and I put this band on, I remember, God, you called us to build a great city here, not just build a great church. And the fifth thing that's a tool that's critical is a committed launch team. Launch team. And just fill in the next blank while you're there, and then we'll diesel on it a little bit. Start a church with a launch team, not a core group.